It's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight, reviews of Back to the Future, the musical, Flex, The Cottage, and Once Upon a One More Time. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two on the Aisle. And here I am in Times Square. Not
And
exactly.
I'm not.
There you go.
He's not either.
I'm not?
You're
Then, what,
not.
then what's this?
And I have the same thing and I can't get it to work. So next time, maybe.
All right, well, next time
We
we'll
got thrown out of the studio for being raucous and obnoxious.
Okay.
No, we didn't. We just couldn't make the schedule this time. So here we are.
We are so eager to tell you about these shows that we're going back and doing it on Zoom. And
That's right. We're zooming just because.
We're going to start with Back to the Future, the musical. Of course, Back to the Future is an iconic film series. And it is now on Broadway. The first film has now been made into a musical. And straight movies, I should say, that have been made into Broadway musicals have a very mixed track record. On the one hand, there's My Fair Lady, which is really based more on the movie of Pygmalion than the play. And it is arguably the greatest musical ever. And you also have Hairspray and Legally Blonde. On the other hand, there's pretty much every other film adaptation that's ever been tried as a Broadway musical. Back to the Future lands in the former category. This is, of course, the story of a teenager, Marty McFly, who via a tricked-out DeLorean, set up by his neighbor and friend, Doc Brown,
goes back 30 years into the past,
runs into his parents, who are now teenagers, must figure out a way to get back to 1985 and to make sure his parents fall in love, or he will be forever erased, I should say.
He has to make sure that his mother doesn't keep hitting on him, too.
Yeah, that too. That's a problem. The story sticks fairly close.
Well, that's because he's so much cuter than his father.
Well, he is. Casey Likes, whose breakout role should have been the musical adaptation of Almost Famous, now has his breakout role, easily stepping into Michael J. Fox's puffy jacket. And then you have Roger Bart as Doc Brown. I will tell you, Christopher Lloyd is such a hard act to follow, but if there's anyone who could do it, it's Roger Bart. I will say that it took him a little while for me to get to accept him in the role, because Christopher Lloyd just leaves such a strong impression. But in the second act, he sings one of the score's better songs about dreamers, and he had me.
Well, I didn't have any trouble with Roger Bart. I went right with him from the very beginning because he was so crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It just worked for me. But,
Mm-hmm.
he and Hugh Coles, who plays the father, are from the British cast as well. They've done this show a lot.
Hugh Coles as the father, he is a nerd's nerd. A guy that people literally put kick me signs on. He lets everybody step over him. He won't stand up for himself. And in fact, even when we first meet him in 1985, he is still being bullied by Biff, who is the definite villain in this piece, but beautifully.
Well, in 1985, isn't
Hackman.
Boss?
I'm sorry?
In 1985, isn't Biff his boss? Doesn't he work for
Yes,
Biff?
yes. And he works for Biff because George has been doing all of Biff's work for him going back to high school. One of the things I loved about the movie was the quaintness and the comparisons, things that Marty had to get used to in 1955 versus 1985. Ironically, now 1985 is further away from where we are than 1955 is. So we have to get used to both the quaint 80s and the quaint 50s, but it retains some of the cleverer gags from the film. There are also a lot of Easter eggs in there pertaining to the future. The score by Alan Silvestri, who wrote the score for the movie, which is why you'll hear the movie theme throughout the evening. And Glenn Ballard, I have to say, is serviceable, but not much more. It's the weak link in this chain, although there are some very good numbers. One of them, as I mentioned, sung by Doc Brown. The others sung by Giovanni Ribisi, who is the once and future mayor. Marty sees him in 1955. He's a young black man who's sweeping up a soda shop. And he says, "Oh, wait, you're going to be mayor." He says, "Yeah, what a great idea." And
By the way, Jelani Ramey also plays Marvin Berry as the leader of the band that Marty McFly
Right.
plays with at the dance.
Yes. And I should mention that Johnny B. Good and Power of Love are both included in the score.
Well, I had a wonderful time on opening night because not only is Power of Love in the story, two other Huey Lewis songs are in the thing as well. And they brought out everybody because it was opening night, and they brought out Huey Lewis, and I adored Huey Lewis.
They brought out Christopher Lloyd. Michael J. Fox was in the audience. I like the choreography from Chris Bailey. They don't do the skateboard scene where Biff is chasing Marty. Marty's on a skateboard, Biff is in his car. Here they have a chase scene around the high school, and it is done with Keystone Cops hilarity. I like John Rando's direction. Some of the special effects, I'll let Leslie touch on the ones she didn't like, we've seen before, but many of the others, the process of the car going through the future really had me on the edge of my seat. I enjoyed the story. It holds up so beautifully. The characters, the performances, the dancing. Somehow there's this chorus that appears, and Marty says, "Wait, where are all these people coming from?" And Doc says, "I don't know. They just appear every so often."
But they're obviously in his head. These are characters that come out to help him. They're a Greek chorus or a robotic chorus of some kind, and they follow him around because he's always thinking.
Okay, that's one explanation. My assumption is that they're from an alternate timeline and they somehow phase in and out of
and why would they do that? They only do that around a Doc. That's the point. Okay, never mind. It's like,
you know what? I'm not an expert in time travel.
Oh, well, okay.
I do know what I like about the theater, and I liked this show very much.
I know you did. I think whenever anybody takes on a show that has a background that comes from another source material, you're constrained by that in some way. John Rando is a director I know and am very fond of, but this one, I mean, it's a big show. It's the worst opening number I've ever seen because it's the introduction to Marty McFly, and he's just one of the guys. I didn't know which one he was until everybody else moved away and he was left alone. I thought that was not a great thing to do. He was not just one of the guys. He was, you know.
But the character is quickly established.
The thing that I didn't care for was the fact that the DeLorean, which I loved and am waiting desperately to have before I go. You know, I'm an elderly person these days, and I want to see a car with doors like that for real. But it had to go and fly like Chitty Chitty Bang Bang over the audience, you know, and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang did it better. So
actually, I think Chitty Chitty Bang Bang was a better musical, and yes, it did fly better. I predict, however, that Back to the Future will have a much better future on Broadway than Chitty did. Chitty deserved much better than it got.
Okay,
and I will give this show 4.5 playbills out of 5.
I will give it 3 1/4, and that's very generous on my part.
And now, as they say, for something totally different, or yeah, for something completely different. It's the Biff in me. Let's talk about Flex.
And in Flex, we go back to 1998. So there is a tie-in with Back to the Future, right?
Yeah.
Just not so far back. And in this particular case, the date is very important because it's the right after the beginning of the women's basketball league. And we're in Arkansas in the boonies, and we're going to see the story of 5 young women who are high school students and part of a team called the Lady Train Basketball Team. And it's very difficult, evidently, and I would think so, to be young and Black and living in Arkansas in 1998. Also, not even in a big city, but in a backwater. And they now look at the women's professional league, and they see that there's a possibility for them to actually, if they're good enough, to actually maybe get into a college on a scholarship the way guys do, and become part of a pro team. And so they see a future that they didn't see before the women's basketball became a reality.
These women, that's the overall story arc. The other arcs are the stories of these individual women. One of them is pregnant, which is why you will see 4 of the girls wearing pregnancy suits in the opening scene. She has been given medical clearance to play basketball, but the coach is keeping her on the sides.
And I have to tell you, if you haven't seen four young Black women playing basketball wearing gigantic bellies, you haven't seen. I mean, it's a big sight gag. Leanna Blaine Cruz is one of my favorite directors. Directed this, and I think she did a really good job with it.
I did like the staging, but the story arcs of the girls were engaging, but not overly interesting. I didn't think the characters were overly well drawn. The actresses were adequate, but not much more. I will say one thing for them: they are great basketball players. There are these scenes where they have to sink the baskets, and on the night I went, they sunk everyone. Everyone went right through the hoop.
And the same with me. I mean, they must be working every day to make sure that they do this.
But this is a
they're on the foul line, but still, it's
it's
quite a feat to get in every time.
It's very impressive.
Now, the name flex, I did not know this. I looked it up. The word flex comes from a basketball term that's used. And frankly, when I was playing basketball in high school, they didn't have any terms. We played by candlelight.
I had never heard that term either.
Well, okay, good. But the term is used to talk about the cohesiveness of a play, which is a generous play where you shoot to everybody and get the ball to the best player suited to get it in the basket. It's no grandstanding. It's about having a team spirit, and that's what the flex move is. So that and you've seen it where people bounce it and they throw it back and forth, and then somebody off in the corner gets the ball and has the best shot. And these girls are not able to do that yet. They know how, they know what they should do. They have played this way, but because there's the possibility to go pro, selfishness and need to show how good
there
they
is some very serious backstabbing that almost derails the team here.
Well, and the thing is that they know that there's going to be a scout coming in, and they think that only one girl is going to be chosen. Right. And Stara, the name of an interesting name of one of the girls, played by Erica. I can't make out her last name. I'm sorry, I just can't read it from where I am. Is really is the one who's out to be the star,
right?
And
she has a rival. I think that's Tamara Tamakali plays her, and this rival is the one that Stara tries to sabotage by poking holes in her condoms. My problem with the play was I didn't find the stories engaging enough or the characters strong enough. Also, this is a sports play. That means when you're getting down to the game, you should be on the edge of your seat. And there is this one-on-one between Stara and her rival, and there is the final championship game. And, you should be hanging out. It's like A League of Their Own, where you see the final game and the two sisters are on opposite teams. You're really hanging on the edge of your seat for that. I didn't feel that with either game here, and that was one of several problems I had with this play.
I do have to take issue with you because the coach pointed out that if they didn't play the flexing, the scout wouldn't take any of them. Mm-hmm. That they had to show what a team spirit they had, and the girls suddenly it went into their heads like, oh, it's better for all of us if we're a team, mm-hmm. And I think that was the point of the play, and so. Then you watch to see would they do it, wouldn't they do it, and I think this was very important. But I did like the fact that the girls were on an equal footing with the boys for one time.
Yeah, and that was nice. But did you feel the tension in the game?
I did. Were they going to do it? Yes, I would give it a pretty solid 4. Mm-hmm. I had a good time. I thought it was well done. I thought the girls were fabulous.
Okay, I cannot agree. I found it engaging, but needed to be stronger. So I would give it 2 3/4, maybe 3 on a good night. Let's talk about The Cottage. This is a combination drawing room comedy, sex farce. It's high comedy and low comedy rolled into one. And I am at a loss to figure out who the most creative party is here. At first glance, it seems like the set designer, Paul Tate Deepu III. I mean,
I
you should
hear
give him
that
the
name
creative
without
award for
laughing.
just having a name like that. You enter the theater, you see this beautiful painting or drawing of a cottage. It looks like this fairy tale cottage on the curtain. But if you look a little closer, Leslie, as you did, and I did not, what did you see?
Well, I think maybe it's that I find the salacious bits because I always look for it somewhere and you don't. But in any case, I agree with you. At first, it just looks like the cottage, and then suddenly you see there's a couple of squirrels and they're having it off, and there's two birds in a tree and they're getting kind of close to something or other, and there are little bees and they're doing something, and you realize that
And
it's Cole Porter's lyric, right?
yeah, and which is appropriate because this play is kind of one
Absolutely.
part Cole Porter, a very generous, several generous helpings of Noel Coward, throw in a little Oscar Wilde, and definitely a heaping teaspoon of Carol Burnett,
Right.
and at least 2 cups of the playwright Sandy Rustin, and you have a pretty impressive play here. Getting back to Mr. Depew, somehow that's a very appropriate name for a play like this.
It's just I don't understand it, and that's
You enter this gorgeous cottage. It is so beautiful, and it has all these clever hiding places, and somehow cigarettes and drinks appear out of the most unusual places.
most unusual indeed.
But there's also Jason Alexander's direction. Yes, it is that Jason Alexander making his Broadway debut as a director. It's Fosse-like precision, the way the actors move around on this play. And what a play. It is absurd, it is ridiculous, and it is so funny. You have Laura Bell Bundy, legally blonde, and she's still blonde here, except that what she's doing is hardly legal because she's having a same time next year affair with her brother-in-law, played by Eric McCormack, Will and Grace. I think he's channeling Kevin Kline, and Laura Bell Bundy may be channeling Sutton Foster. I'm not sure, but they're both doing such an excellent job on stage. She is first among equals in this piece. And they're having their illicit affair, and they think, oh, aren't we, clever, whatever. It turns out that's just the tip of the iceberg. Because McCormack's wife, played by
Lily Cooper, who is very pregnant.
Yeah, extremely, much more so than those girl basketball players.
Yes.
And she's having an affair with his brother.
Yes.
And it's more than once a year, so they're all over the place. And then there's Dana Steingold as McCormack's other mistress.
Yeah, she's a latecomer to the party, and
Right.
a bit of a red herring as well.
And there just might be someone who returns from the dead. There are a few surprises, some of which you may guess, some of which you won't. And it's just cleverly done, very funny. I'm ashamed to say this because I hate fart jokes. I didn't even like it in Blazing Saddles. I think they're ridiculous and stupid. And yet there is a fart joke which goes on way too long, and I laughed. Brooks Atkinson, forgive me. I did. But
I wonder if it's because a woman did it this time instead of a guy.
I don't think so.
The set suits the action so well that the set becomes another character. It really does. And everybody is so well suited to what they're given to do. And again, Jason Alexander, it's not what I would have thought Jason Alexander might have picked for his first play, but he does a great job with all the little things. Because don't forget, the director has to have the eye on everything. And so the set is as much his doing as it is he tells the designer what he wants, or she tells the designer what they want. And so it's a marvelous marriage of the two. I enjoyed it very much, and I would give it. It sagged now and then. It could have been a little bit shorter. I think to make those things go, they should be short, fast, and funny. That's the way they really have to be. But nonetheless, I would give it a 4.75. No, I'm sorry, a 3.75. Excuse me. No, I know. I would give it a 3.75.
We're pretty close on this because I will give it 4. I will also mention Alex Moffat, who's all over the place as Eric McCormack's brother.
Oh, Alex Moffat, yes.
Moffat. And Nahal Joshi as, well, somebody who shows up. Really can't say who, but you will enjoy it.
Let's talk about Once Upon a One More Time.
Yes. What is it about fairy tales?
What is it?
That...
We're getting all these takes
Well, what is it about fairy tales
especially
that is
Cinderella.
calling on various and sundry writers to think that it's time to update them in some way. Mm-hmm. And it's since Stephen Sondheim and Into the Woods. I don't remember seeing 42 different versions of Cinderella before Stephen Sondheim. And then once he opened that floodgate, everybody could go, well, if he could do that with Into the Woods, I'm going to do it into the swimming pool. And off we go, you know. This starts with a book club of all the fairy tale princesses. And when I say all, it includes the Princess and the Pea and Ariel. It starts with Cinderella.
Well, they don't call her Ariel, I think, for copyright reasons. So she's just a little mermaid.
Just a little mermaid. But you also get the high-end princesses. So you get Cinderella, you get Snow White, you get Rapunzel. I didn't know who the Princess and the Pea. She's Princess P. I didn't know that's who she was. But that's from the mattresses, folks. That's from Once Upon a Mattress, you know.
I guess they can't call her Princess Winifred either because of Once Upon.
Right. Well, Princess P is just a horrible name. It goes with Mr. Defoe from
yeah. Well, I guess they should do a show together. But yes. What you're leaving out is this is based or inspired by the songs of Britney Spears.
Oh yes. Well, it takes place in fairy tale land, which is no time, so it doesn't matter. You know, we've been talking about back and forth in time and space, but
it's an interesting atmosphere because they have telephones, but they don't have sliced bread. And the princesses basically they sit around, but when a child wants to hear their story, they get up with the other characters and they act it out. And children like to hear the same story, the story told the same way, so it's done the same way. Although there have been some evolutions over the years because the stepsisters in Cinderella's story no longer get blinded and have their feet cut, but it essentially goes
well, there's no cruelty in them. In fact, the narrator says to the stepmother at one point, well, we're not as cruel as we once were, you know.
Right.
And that's what he's talking about. But at a point and very quickly on, Cinderella meets someone. She's kind of wishing that things could be different, that her life might change, and that something exciting might happen. She's bored.
Besides going to the ball and meeting the prince.
Well, we didn't have that. Oh, you beat it every single time, yes. But even that's boring since it's done every single time. Yes, I have to be home at midnight. Yes, I have to leave a slipper. You know, so it's boring. So she's speaking about that, and suddenly in schleps a woman, a very bohemian-looking woman with very flat shoes, who flaps in like a clown and says, "Hey, just kid, you want to see something here? Here's a different kind of book." And she pulls out the Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, and Cinderella takes it, and they talk about whether it's a scroll. Oh my goodness, it's a scroll, but it's small. You can carry it with you. How wonderful!
And they don't have books in that reality.
Yes, they didn't have books. And she says, "Who was Princess Betty?" And I thought that was hysterically funny. Princess Betty Friedan was hysterically funny. But anyway, she reads the book, and then the other girls, she tells them about it, and they want to read it, and they do read it, and they begin to get all of these notions. And what I particularly loved was the princes. They travel in a pack. They do not travel alone. Prince Charming is out front. I did not see Justin Guarini, who is the normal star, as Prince Charming, but I saw his understudy, who was fabulous. Stephen Scott Wormley was just delightful. And all the princes have names, but except for Charming, the names are kind of weird.
But these princes were really chorus boys. They had no.
Yes, they were, but I love their names: Prince Mischievous, Prince Gregarious, Prince Suave, Prince Affable, Prince Brawny. They're not kind of names that you'd want to be known by. But what they do in the background is they are doing this very, very, and it's two British choreographers who came up with the stuff. They're doing old Janet Jackson / Stephen Hoggett kind of very stumpy, kind of, you know, masculine kind of.
Well, it becomes a battle between the princesses who want the story changed, and it does not help matters that it turns out that the same prince has been romancing all these princesses. There are all these princesses only, and one prince, which I think hurts the storyline because it, you know, if you're looking for a discovery out of your life, that's one thing. But here, of course, you want something different. If you know that the man you thought you were in love with is cheating on you.
You know, you thought that the cheating was funny in in the cottage, and here's cheating.
Well, yes, but everybody was doing it there. It's a totally different
I thought they at least had a different take. I thought it was clever. You got to come up with something different. That was something different,
Well, well, no, it wasn't all that different because Sondheim got there first with Cheating Princess.
Yes, that's true. You're right. But he only had 2 people do it. Here, the one guy did all of them.
Now there were 4 of us who went to see it. My daughter, her friend, and you. My daughters grew up with Britney Spears. I am not overly familiar with her music. You read The Feminine Mystique. You're probably the only one in the audience who did. So I'm kind of coming up from behind. Yes, I like the performances, the music. I'm not a big Britney Spears fan, but it was well executed. I did have several problems with the storyline because one of them, that every man in that play who was not gay was a moron or a philanderer.
Not the narrator.
Well, he was going along with it, so I don't
that's
of him. But again, for what it is, it was well executed.
Your daughter and I both enjoyed it very much, and we loved that part about it. And the girl in front of us told us that it's in the zeitgeist. The Barbie movie is being taught at 7 different classes at Columbia. I did want to point out 2 actors. Jennifer Samard as the stepmother was wonderful. Yes. And Adam Godley from the Lehman Trio was the narrator.
I would like to add Briga Heelan as Cinderella and Morgan Whitley with her wonderful pantomime as the Little Mermaid.
And Brooke Dillman was the OFG, the original fairy godmother.
Whose name turns out to be Betty.
Could be. One doesn't know, does one?
One never knows, do one?
What did you give it?
I will give this 3 playbills.
And I will give it 4. I had a good time. And I don't know how you can't know Britney Spears music. It's played in elevators. It's played in supermarkets. It's the music of the 80s and 90s. That girl was around forever.
And she still is. In fact, when I got home that evening, the first thing that popped on my phone was Britney Spears is getting a divorce. So
yeah, that's sad.
There may be a sequel to this. And then I'm afraid we're out of time, so we have to make like a tree and get out of here. When you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
On the aisle. Make like a tree. I don't get that.
Back to the Future.
Oh.
I don't know. A used car, huh? Looks like it's got about 3 million miles on it, and all this stainless steel. Great Scott! Can this thing really do 88?
Trust me.
All right, I'll take it for a test drive. The Winter Garden Theatre on Broadway. I'll be back in no time.
I doubt it. I think you're going to be at the Winter Garden for a long